Elon Reeve Musk was born on June 28, 1971 in Pretoria, South Africa, during a period when the country was politically tense and socially divided. From early childhood, he showed a pattern that would later define him: intense curiosity, long stretches of solitary focus, and a preference for building systems over following them. Family life shaped him in complicated ways. He grew up in a home where ambition and sharp opinions were present, and where independence was expected rather than gently taught. In later interviews, Musk has described himself as a kid who read constantly, sometimes disappearing into books for hours, as if reality had a pause button he could press whenever he wanted to explore an idea. One of the earliest signals of his engineering instinct was software. As a teenager, he learned programming and created a simple game he sold to a magazine. The amount of money was modest, the significance wasn't. What mattered was the loop. Learn a tool, build something from nothing, ship it, get feedback, repeat. That build, test, iterate rhythm is essentially the spine of his career. Musk's desire to leave South Africa grew from multiple pressures: personal, cultural, and practical. He wanted access to bigger technology ecosystems and broader opportunity, and he also wanted to avoid being locked into the country's mandatory military service at the time. He moved first to Canada, leveraging family connections, and later transitioned to the United States. The move was not a smooth, cinematic leap. It was more like a series of deliberate steps: school, work, immigration paperwork, small apartments, and a lot of internal certainty that the future would be made elsewhere. He attended college in North America and eventually entered the orbit of elite U.S. higher education. For Musk, school was never the end goal. It was a staging area, useful for acquiring tools, meeting smart people, and accessing resources. He studied subjects that mapped onto the world he wanted to build: physics for first principles reasoning and the laws of reality, and business economics for understanding how value and incentives move people. But even then, the entrepreneurial itch seemed stronger than the desire for credentials. In the mid to late 1990s, the internet was moving from curiosity to infrastructure. Musk recognized something essential. The web wasn't just a new marketplace, it was a new interface to daily life. He dropped out of a graduate program to start a company, an early example of the risk calculus he would become famous for. His first major venture, Zip2, focused on helping newspapers create online city guides and maps, tools that sound ordinary now, but were forward-looking then. Zip2 was the kind of business that lived at the intersection of software and practical commerce, not glamorous, but valuable. The company grew in a time when startup culture was still forming. Musk worked punishing hours and developed a reputation for intensity. He pushed speed, demanded results, and aimed for technical solutions rather than incremental compromises. That drive created momentum, but it also created friction, an early hint of a pattern that would repeat throughout his life. Musk's tolerance for discomfort, his own and others, could generate breakthroughs, but it could also wear people down. Zip2 was eventually acquired, and Musk emerged with real money for the first time. Many entrepreneurs would have treated that as a finish line: buy comfort, diversify, slow down. Musk treated it like fuel. Instead of reducing risk, he increased it. He chose to aim at a bigger target: finance. His next venture, X.com, was started in 1999, during a period when online banking still felt like science fiction to most people. The premise was bold: money could move as easily as email. X.com later merged with a company that had a different approach to digital payments. Out of that merger came PayPal, a name that would become synonymous with the early internet economy. The product hit a deep need: simple online payments in a growing digital marketplace, and the company grew rapidly. But growth came with power struggles. Musk's aggressive pace and strong opinions made him both a driver of innovation and a lightning rod inside leadership circles. Corporate boards, especially in chaotic, high-growth environments, tend to value predictability. Musk tends to value velocity. Eventually, leadership changes occurred, and Musk was removed from the CEO role, an event that could have broken a less stubborn personality. Instead, it sharpened him. PayPal was later acquired by eBay, and Musk's stake turned into a fortune. At this point, the story could have ended in a conventional way. Young multimillionaire becomes investor, philanthropist, or quiet executive. Musk didn't want a conventional ending. He wanted a harder problem. He began asking a question that sounded almost absurd for a software founder. What are the bottlenecks holding back the future? In his view, the future wasn't being delayed by lack of imagination, it was being delayed by industries that had become slow, expensive, and cautious. Space travel was expensive, cars were dependent on fossil fuels, energy systems were inefficient. These weren't just business opportunities, they were civilizational constraints. And Musk, for reasons that are part ambition and part personal obsession, decided he would attack them. That decision set up the second act of his life, moving from software into atoms, factories, rockets, batteries, and systems where failure was not a bug, it was a crater. After the PayPal era, Musk redirected his wealth and attention toward two enormous projects that most people considered unrealistic: making space travel dramatically cheaper and making electric vehicles desirable enough to compete with gas-powered cars. These were not small pivots. They were leaps from software to the kind of engineering that involves metal, heat, supply chains, safety margins, and physics that doesn't care how confident you feel. SpaceX, a private company aiming at the sky. Musk founded SpaceX, Space Exploration Technologies Corp., with a straightforward goal that sounded anything but simple: reduce the cost of access to space and make life multi-planetary in the long run. To Musk, space wasn't a luxury, it was insurance. If human civilization was ever threatened by natural disaster, war, climate instability, or something we hadn't even imagined, having the capability to live beyond Earth could be the difference between collapse and survival. But the dream had to be engineered. SpaceX started with a painful reality. Rockets were extremely expensive, failure rates were high, and the industry was dominated by governments and long-established contractors. Musk approached it like a startup problem: question every assumption, vertically integrate what you can, and iterate faster than the incumbents. The early years nearly destroyed the company. Building a rocket is not like building an app. Each test is expensive, each launch risks existential. SpaceX's first rocket family, Falcon 1, went through repeated failures. For Musk personally, this was a bet-the-house period. He was pouring his fortune into SpaceX while also financially supporting Tesla, another bleeding-edge venture. By the late 2000s, both companies were close to collapse. What changed SpaceX's fate was a combination of technical improvement, stubborn persistence, and crucially, winning a major contract that validated the company and provided needed funding. That contract didn't appear out of thin air. It was earned through a string of hard lessons, and in that storyline is one of Musk's most defining traits. He tends to treat failure as tuition. Most people fear failure because it threatens identity. Musk appears to fear stagnation more. SpaceX became known not just for building rockets, but for trying to recover and reuse them, an idea that had been proposed before but rarely pushed with such relentless execution. The logic was simple: if you can reuse a rocket like an airplane, you don't have to rebuild it each time. The challenge was brutal. Rockets return from space at extreme speeds and temperatures. Landing them safely is like throwing a pencil over a skyscraper and landing it upright on a postage stamp in a hurricane. Yet Musk kept forcing the company to chase reusability, not as a nice-to-have, but as a central pillar. Tesla, making electric cars feel inevitable. Tesla's rise is often told as a clean hero narrative, but the reality was messy. The company's mission, accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, was inspiring, but the path was filled with manufacturing constraints, engineering complexity, and the cold math of automotive economics. Tesla began by producing a high-end electric sports car, the Roadster, which proved that EVs could be fast, stylish, and exciting. It was a statement. Electric didn't have to mean boring. Musk's role at Tesla evolved into leadership at the highest level, and his personal brand became deeply tied to the company's public perception. He pushed Tesla toward a strategy that many thought was backwards. Traditional wisdom would say, start cheap, go mass market, then go premium. Tesla did the opposite. Start premium to fund the development of technology, then drive costs down to reach broader markets. It was a staircase approach, expensive at first, then more accessible over time. But the near-death experience came early. Production delays, cost overruns, and internal conflict threatened Tesla's survival. Musk took on immense stress, not only as an executive, but as the public face absorbing criticism from every angle. Skeptics who thought EVs would never scale, critics who felt he overpromised, and investors watching cash burn. He responded by pushing harder, demanding speed, efficiency, and a culture that treated deadlines as sacred. This approach produced results, but it also produced controversy. Former employees and observers have described Tesla and SpaceX as environments where the mission mattered deeply, but the intensity was extreme. That intensity is part of Musk's mythology. The founder who sleeps at the factory, works through the night, expects others to do the same, and treats the job like a war for the future. The first principles mindset. A key idea associated with Musk is first principles thinking, breaking a problem down to fundamental truths and rebuilding the solution from scratch. Whether or not he invented the phrase, he popularized it in business culture. In practice, it meant things like, why are rockets so expensive? Not because that's how it is, but what are rockets made of? What do those materials cost? And what processes are bloated by tradition? The goal is to escape inherited assumptions. This mindset can unlock breakthroughs, but it can also create tension with specialists who value experience and caution. Musk challenges experts. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong, but his approach tends to force movement, and in industries that move slowly, forcing movement can be disruptive in a way that looks like genius or recklessness depending on the outcome. By the early 2010s, Tesla and SpaceX were no longer experiments. They were shaping entire industries. Tesla helped push EVs into the mainstream conversation and pressured traditional automakers to accelerate their own electric programs. SpaceX proved that private companies could become major players in space launch and innovation. Musk was no longer just a tech entrepreneur. He had become a symbol. To fans, an architect of the future. To critics, an unpredictable force. To competitors, a threat. And to the public, a constant headline generator. As Musk's companies matured, his life story shifted from founder trying to survive to leader trying to scale. Scaling is not just growth, it is transformation. A small team can win through brilliance and speed. A large organization wins through systems, manufacturing, supply chain discipline, recruiting pipelines, safety processes, and political navigation. Musk attempted to scale not one, but multiple complex organizations at the same time. Tesla scales into a global force. Tesla's evolution from niche EV maker to global automotive and energy company required solving manufacturing at a level few startups ever face. Software companies can ship updates at near zero marginal cost. Car companies must move atoms. Musk pushed Tesla toward vertical integration and factory innovation, building gigafactories to manufacture batteries and vehicles at scale. The company's success helped shift consumer expectations. Electric became not just acceptable, but aspirational. At the same time, Tesla's journey involved periodic production crises, quality complaints, regulatory attention, and intense public debate over Musk's statements. Musk's communication style amplified the volatility. He uses social media in a way that blurs lines between CEO, marketer, engineer, and provocateur. Sometimes that directness benefits him. It energizes fans, draws attention, and bypasses traditional media filters. Sometimes it damages credibility. Overconfident timelines can create disappointment and mistrust. Investors and regulators have also scrutinized his public statements, reflecting how much a single person's words can move markets when that person is Elon Musk. SpaceX matures and Starlink changes the map. SpaceX's progress continued into larger and more ambitious programs. The company built rockets capable of delivering larger payloads and reusing boosters more routinely, turning what once looked like magic into an operational habit. Another major move was Starlink, SpaceX's satellite internet initiative, which aimed to provide global broadband coverage using a large constellation of satellites. Starlink expanded SpaceX from launch services into telecommunications and infrastructure. It also introduced new debates about the night sky, orbital congestion, and the governance of space as an increasingly crowded domain. Musk's long-term dream remained consistent: Mars. The idea is not just to visit, but to build the capability to create a self-sustaining settlement, something that would require transportation systems, life support, energy, construction, food production, and governance. Critics argue the timeline is unrealistic. Supporters argue that even partial progress accelerates innovation and inspires talent. Energy, batteries, and the whole system view. Musk has repeatedly argued that sustainable energy isn't a single product, it's a system. Electric vehicles need charging infrastructure, renewable energy needs storage, power grids need resilience. That system view connected Tesla's automotive identity to its energy products, batteries, solar, and grid support. Whether one agrees with his execution or not, the worldview is coherent. If you want to change civilization's energy base, you need to transform multiple linked bottlenecks, not just one. The public persona becomes a second storyline. By the mid-2010s, Musk was not only building companies, he was becoming an internet figure with an unusual level of cultural reach. His persona mixed seriousness and meme culture, engineering and spectacle. He could talk about rocket engines one moment and post jokes the next. That blend made him feel accessible to many people, like a CEO who spoke native internet. But it also drew criticism, especially when posts were seen as careless, combative, or politically charged. This is where Musk's biography becomes complicated. His achievements in engineering and business are inseparable from controversy about leadership style, workplace culture allegations, public statements, and how much power one individual should hold over critical infrastructure, space launch, communications, automotive transition. To supporters, he's bold enough to push civilization forward. To critics, he's too impulsive, too centralized, and too willing to move fast in areas where slow caution protects people. AI, automation, and the next constraint. Musk has also been closely associated with the rise of AI discussions, sometimes as a builder, sometimes as a critic warning about potential risks. He has promoted the idea that advanced AI could be dangerous if not aligned with human values, while also acknowledging its transformative benefits. This dual stance, building while warning, reflects a broader Musk pattern. He tends to see technology as both salvation and existential risk, and he wants to steer it rather than watch it unfold without him. Leadership pattern, mission, intensity, and the cost of doing it. Across his biography, a repeating pattern stands out. He chooses extremely hard problems. He overcommits publicly to timelines. He pushes teams to operate at a pace most organizations reject. He absorbs enormous personal stress and expects others to do the same. He accepts failures as part of iteration, sometimes too casually for critics. He uses attention as a tool to recruit, fundraise, sell products, and control narrative. That pattern has produced undeniable results, but also undeniable backlash. Many biographies of famous figures try to settle the question, hero or villain. Musk resists that simplicity. He is both an engine of progress and a generator of conflict. The truth is less tidy. He is a person with intense strengths that come attached to intense weaknesses, amplified by wealth, visibility, and the scale of what he's attempting. personal life and the pressure of being always on. Musk's personal life, relationships, family, and the emotional toll of constant scrutiny has often unfolded under public attention. That attention can distort everything. Ordinary life events become content, private pain becomes speculation. Regardless of one's opinion of him, it's clear that Musk lives with a level of psychological load few people experience: multiple high-stakes companies, constant criticism, and the strange trap of celebrity where every statement is dissected. The biography as an unfinished engine. Musk's story is still in motion. Unlike a historical figure whose arc can be neatly summarized, Musk's biography is like a machine running at full speed, while journalists try to write the manual. His long-term legacy will likely depend on outcomes still unresolved. Can SpaceX make reusable launch and deep space transport routine enough to reshape space access permanently? Can Tesla and the wider ecosystem complete the transition to sustainable transportation without destabilizing grids or supply chains? Can satellite internet expand access while managing environmental and orbital concerns? Can AI be developed and governed responsibly at civilization scale? For Musk, those aren't abstract questions, they're his chosen battlegrounds. In the end, the most accurate way to describe Elon Musk is this: he is a person who treats the future like a problem set, one he feels obligated to solve, even if the work breaks things, breaks people, or breaks his own sense of calm. Whether history praises him, condemns him, or does both, it will almost certainly agree on one point: he changed the trajectory of multiple industries by refusing to accept the pace at which the world said change was possible. By the mid-2010s, Elon Musk's biography stopped fitting the classic founder builds one company template. Instead, he was assembling an ecosystem: vehicles plus batteries plus charging plus satellites plus rockets plus a social platform plus AI. Each piece could stand alone as a major career. Together, they turned him into something closer to an infrastructure operator, someone whose decisions could affect transportation, communications, and information flow at global scale. Tesla becomes a manufacturing empire, not just a tech story. Tesla's reputation initially felt like Silicon Valley meets cars, but the real transformation happened when it became a high-volume manufacturer. That shift forced Tesla to fight battles that software founders don't usually face: factory layout, quality control, supply bottlenecks, labor constraints, shipping logistics, and the brutal math of automotive margins. Musk pushed Tesla toward vertical integration and speed. Supporters saw this as necessary. Traditional automakers were slow, and the climate/energy transition couldn't wait. Critics argued Tesla's pace sometimes came at a cost: uneven build quality reports, stressful working conditions, and a corporate culture that could feel punishing. Both stories exist because the same trait, relentless urgency, can produce breakthroughs and burnout. But Tesla's larger impact is difficult to deny. It helped electrification become a mainstream expectation rather than a niche experiment. Once consumers saw EVs could be fast, stylish, and practical, the psychological barrier broke. After that, other automakers accelerated their own EV timelines. In that sense, Tesla didn't just compete in a market, it forced the market to move. SpaceX shifts from launch company to space utility. SpaceX's early narrative was about cheaper launches. Later, it became about systems, rapid cadence, reusability, and a new kind of space infrastructure. Starlink especially changed the meaning of SpaceX. The company wasn't only delivering payloads for others, it was building its own global internet network in orbit. This created a new kind of leverage. When you own rockets and satellites, your business is no longer a service provider. It becomes a platform. That platform can deliver connectivity in remote regions, respond in emergencies, and reshape telecom economics. It can also raise concerns about orbital congestion, governance, and what happens when essential communications depend on private corporate decisions. Musk's long-term Starship ambition, high-frequency launches, and huge payload capability was framed as the backbone for scaling Starlink, deep space missions, and eventually Mars settlement goals. Publicly available timelines and test milestones have repeatedly shifted, but the direction has stayed constant: build a vehicle system that makes space operations routine, not rare. Starship integrated test flight history is summarized in the Starship reference timeline. Buying Twitter/X turned Musk into a cultural actor, not just an engineer. In April 2022, Musk announced a deal to buy Twitter, and the acquisition completed on October 27, 2022. This move is essential biography material because it changed Musk's relationship with public power. With Tesla and SpaceX, Musk was influencing the future through products. With X, he was influencing the future through information flow, speech norms, and the daily pulse of politics and culture. Running a social platform is different from engineering a rocket. Rockets fail in visible, physical ways. Social platforms fail in subtle, human ways, through trust erosion, harassment dynamics, misinformation spread, and changes to who feels safe participating. Musk framed many changes as pushing openness and resisting over-moderation. Critics argued the platform became more chaotic and less reliable as a public square. Regardless of where you land, the outcome is the same. Musk became part executive, part cultural combatant. And once a person becomes a cultural symbol, their biography becomes polarized. People don't just evaluate outcomes, they evaluate identity. Musk's supporters interpret his conflicts as proof he is challenging broken systems. His critics interpret them as proof he is reckless with power. This is the moment his story shifts from builder biography into battle biography. AI becomes the new frontier, and Musk refuses to watch from the sidelines. Musk's relationship with AI has always carried tension, warning about risk while still wanting to build. With XAI, he stepped fully into the race. What changed the stakes in early 2026 is that SpaceX acquired XAI in a deal that Reuters reported as unifying Musk's AI and space ambitions, including Grok, with reported valuations and stock exchange details. That matters because it signals Musk's strategy is no longer multiple separate ventures. It's closer to one integrated machine. Rockets launch satellites, satellites deliver data and connectivity, AI models run on that data, the social platform distributes outputs, the whole system reinforces itself. This kind of integration can be visionary. It can also be alarming, depending on how one thinks about concentration of power. The 2026 snapshot happens, a single person with multiple critical systems. By February 2026, Musk's identity is not stable or singular. He is simultaneously a manufacturing leader, a space and satellite infrastructure leader, a platform owner shaping speech and news rhythms, and now more deeply tied to frontier AI via corporate consolidation. At this scale, the biography becomes less about what he did and more about what kind of world his style produces. Because Musk's style is consistent. He seeks bottlenecks, he attacks them with speed, he overcommits to timelines, he uses attention as fuel, he tolerates friction as the price of momentum. This style can create historic acceleration. It can also generate instability, especially in arenas governed by trust, politics, and human behavior, rather than physics. That's why Part 3 ends with an unresolved question that future biographers will argue over. Did Musk compress the timeline to a better future, or did he normalize too much private control over public infrastructure? The honest answer so far is his career contains evidence for both interpretations.
If you remove brand names, Tesla, SpaceX, X, and just study Elon Musk's pattern, you see a repeatable method. It's part engineering, part management, part psychological posture toward time. First principles isn't a slogan to him, it's a weapon. Musk is famous for first principles thinking, but the more practical description is he dislikes inherited assumptions. When he sees an industry where this is how it's always done, he interprets it as a warning label. Profit, waste, and inertia are probably hiding there.
In software, breaking assumptions is normal. In aerospace and automotive, assumptions exist because disasters happen when you ignore hard-earned lessons. Musk's approach is to challenge those assumptions anyway, but to do it through testing and iteration. This is why his companies run on prototypes, rapid cycles, and frequent redesign. The upside is speed. The downside is that speed can collide with safety culture, regulatory patience, and human limits. Musk's biography can't be understood without acknowledging that his greatest strength, moving faster than normal, also creates his most predictable risks. The calendar is his main enemy. Musk behaves like time is the ultimate constraint. He speaks and acts as if the clock is always running out, on climate, on energy transition, on competition, on civilization's fragility. That urgency is a powerful motivator, but it also becomes a justification for intensity. This is where stories diverge. Admirers see it as rare leadership, someone who treats mission like reality, not marketing. Critics see it as a pressure engine, a culture where deadlines become morality and exhaustion becomes a badge. The biography truth is that both realities can coexist in the same organization, even at the same time, depending on where someone sits. He uses pain as a filter. Many leaders try to minimize discomfort. Musk often uses discomfort to select for commitment. In high-intensity environments, the people who stay tend to be those who thrive under pressure or deeply believe in the mission. That creates a workforce that can accomplish extraordinary tasks. It can also create survivorship bias. The organization hears mostly from those who endured, while those who burned out disappear from the narrative. This is why Musk's companies can look like miracle factories from the outside and like endurance tests from the inside. Control versus delegation, the constant tension. Musk's leadership style leans toward direct involvement. Sometimes it's technical review, sometimes it's product detail, sometimes it's organizational restructuring. In a startup, that can be effective. At massive scale, it becomes a vulnerability because bottlenecks form around the leader's attention. Yet, Musk also built a reputation for attracting elite engineers and putting them on problems that feel historically meaningful. His companies can offer something many careers don't, the sense that your work changes what's possible. That sense is intensely motivating, often enough to offset the stress for certain personalities. This is why he posts constantly and makes bold forecasts. It's not only ego, though ego may play a role, it's also strategy. Attention is leverage. But narrative has a downside. When you repeatedly announce ambitious timelines, you risk training the public to distrust you. Over time, that can reduce the power of narrative, unless results are spectacular enough to reset belief. The core biography argument, visionary discipline, or reckless acceleration. Musk's method is not neutral. It has moral weight because it affects real people, workers, customers, and societies that depend on infrastructure. A fair biography doesn't choose a side too early. It observes the mechanism. Urgency creates intensity, intensity creates output, output creates power, power amplifies mistakes, mistakes generate backlash, backlash fuels more urgency. That loop can drive progress or spiral into chaos depending on how it's governed.
Once Musk became a public symbol, controversies stopped being occasional events and became a permanent background climate. A biography that ignores this becomes propaganda. A biography that reduces him only to controversy becomes incomplete. 1. The overpromise debate. Musk's timelines are famous for being aggressive. Supporters argue this is deliberate. Unrealistic targets force the organization to discover new efficiencies. Critics argue it erodes trust and misleads customers and investors.
In biography terms, this isn't just a PR issue. It reveals how Musk motivates. He uses the future as a deadline, not a dream. 2. Workplace culture criticism. Across Tesla and SpaceX, critics have raised concerns about intense working conditions, pressure, and workplace disputes. Supporters counter that world-changing engineering is inherently demanding and that many employees choose the mission knowingly. The key biography insight: Musk's organizations often operate like wartime teams in peacetime industries. That mismatch creates both extraordinary results and extraordinary conflict. 3. Platform governance and speech conflict. X. Owning X places Musk at the center of constant disagreement over moderation, harassment, misinformation, and political influence. In a factory, you can measure defects. In a social platform, the defects are human: trust, safety, truth, fairness. That makes every decision feel political, even when framed as technical. This is why Musk's reputation became more polarized after the X acquisition. It tied him to culture war dynamics that can't be solved with engineering alone. 4. The one person, too much leverage critique. As Musk's portfolio expanded into transportation, space launches, satellite internet, AI, and a major communication platform, critics increasingly worried about dependency. If essential systems rely on the preferences of a single leader, what happens when that leader is impulsive, distracted, or emotionally reactive? Supporters reply that big leaps often come from concentrated leadership, and that Musk's results justify the structure. In biography terms, this is the central political question of his life. Should progress be allowed to be this centralized if it's this fast? 5. How Musk responds to criticism. A consistent Musk behavior is refusing to soften his edges for universal approval. He rarely attempts to become broadly liked in the traditional executive way. Instead, he seems to prefer a world where supporters are intensely supportive, critics are intensely critical, and the mission continues regardless. That makes him resilient because he doesn't require consensus. It also makes him volatile because consensus is often how societies maintain stability. Biographies usually end with a verdict. Musk's story can't. The most important chapters depend on outcomes still unfolding. Behind the scenes, the legacy levers still in motion. Musk's long-term legacy likely turns on several unresolved tracks: Starship and space industrialization. If Starship achieves high cadence and reliable reusability, it may reshape the economics of space for decades. If it stalls, the Mars narrative could become a cautionary tale of ambition exceeding practicality. Starship flight testing milestones and cadence attempts remain a public focal point. EV transition and energy systems. Tesla's role in electrification is already historically significant, but the endgame is bigger: supply chains, grid resilience, battery scaling, and making clean energy reliable for billions. Global communications via Starlink. If Starlink expands access responsibly, it could be remembered as one of the most meaningful connectivity projects of the era. If it triggers governance or environmental conflicts, it may become a case study in how private infrastructure reshapes public life. AI and platform integration. SpaceX's acquisition of xAI in early February 2026 makes Musk's AI ambitions structurally closer to space/communication infrastructure, which could accelerate innovation or raise the stakes of oversight and safety. The two Musk distinctions. 1. The builder versus operator transformation. Early Musk was a builder, proving something could be done. Modern Musk is an operator, managing systems the world may come to rely on. Builders are judged by imagination and execution. Operators are judged by stability, governance, and responsibility. This is the phase where Musk's temperament matters as much as his intelligence. A single impulsive decision can ripple widely when the systems are large enough. 2. What his supporters will say. Supporters will likely summarize Musk as a rare engineer-entrepreneur who moved civilization forward, someone who made electric cars desirable and space launches cheaper, someone who refused to accept impossible, someone who made the future arrive sooner. They will point to visible milestones, industry shifts, and the way competitors were forced to evolve. 3. What his critics will say. Critics will likely summarize Musk as a leader who concentrates power, someone whose public behavior created unnecessary instability, someone who treated people as inputs to the mission, someone who blurred the line between private ambition and public consequence. They will point to controversies, governance concerns, and the dangers of tying infrastructure to personality. 4. What a balanced history might say. A balanced future biography might say something like, Elon Musk didn't just create companies, he created momentum, and then rode that momentum into domains where the ethical and political stakes are as large as the technical ones. His life demonstrates that changing the world is not only a question of invention, it is also a question of how power is used once invention succeeds. 5. The final open question. The simplest summary of the unfinished Musk biography is this: will Musk's systems mature into stable public goods or remain high-speed private projects that the world is forced to adapt to? History will decide based on what happens next, not only what he builds, but how those systems behave when the spotlight moves on, when crises occur, and when the world demands not speed but reliability.